this has been a long time coming, and woo boy, do I have a lot to say here. Netflix's Devil May Cry.
The radical left is already using this to push their agenda that America should step down from our role as quote-unquote global police.
Gee, I wonder what they're trying to say here. Obviously, Kamen, it's trying to set up the subtle political elements in the... That's a good thought, so today's your lucky day! Okay, we're getting ahead of ourselves. There are positives and negatives about this show, but if you want my abridged opinion, I had some fun with it. But as I predicted a long while ago, I'd love the action, but I'd hate the writing. And while I won't say that it's fully true that the writing as a whole is bad, it did have its issues. At this point, I'm mixed on the show, because while I won't say it's fully bad, it, much like the Castlevania series on Netflix, there's some good and there's some bad. I'm MangaKamen and...
This party's getting crazy. Let's rock.
This story takes place in an alternate universe of Devil May Cry, set in New York City of all places. We follow the exploits of one Dante, the demon slayer, who's being targeted by humans and demons alike for the pendant around his neck and his blood, too. His pendant is the key to unlocking the door to the demon realm, and the soldiers of Darkcom, yes, really, who work for the American government, are trying to get Dante's pendant and at one time recruit him. Meanwhile, you have the White Rabbit, a villain based on one of the characters from the Devil May Cry manga of the same ilk, rounding up demons, doing the same to get Dante's pendant and blood to open up the demon world of Makai. Obviously, there's a lot more going on here, but we'll save that for later in the video. I think it should be clear that this is an alternative to the original Devil May Cry 3, and that's not a problem. There tends to be a bit of a misconception that people who voice complaints about an adaptation, especially a Netflix one, that we have issues because it's not quote-unquote lore accurate. While it's fine to dislike a show or something for disregarding the lore of its original series, I feel like that sort of thing dismisses any sort of actual criticism levied against the product. Do I personally not like the choice that this is an alternate version of the Devil May Cry storyline? Yes, I do not like that decision. Is it affecting my thoughts on the show itself? Well, we all have our own personal biases. I won't act like there isn't a part of me that doesn't appreciate that choice in that direction, but considering that this is doing its own thing, I'm more than thankful that the original DMC narrative is untouched. Now, does that mean I think the actual show is a garbage fire? No, but it's a lot more complicated, because I can tell you that my issues with the show aren't related to the fact that it doesn't follow the lore of Devil May Cry to a C. Rather, it doesn't follow its spirit. And I know that's a nebulous term, spirit, but trust me when I say I will explain myself. It's mostly because when you watch an adaptation, especially if they're related to Netflix, I've kind of been conditioned to not expect a one-to-one story. I mean, we're in a world where Minecraft has a movie where Jack Black is being paid to be Jack Black.
Who are you?
Don't say it.
I'm Steve.
Oh no!
And I grew up with stuff like the Resident Evil films and the Super Mario movie. And while we've gotten some good adaptations in recent time, like the Sonic movies and ironically the Super Mario movie, just because they don't follow the lore of the in-games doesn't mean that it doesn't make them good or bad. Much like how that doesn't mean that Netflix DMC is good or bad. It's more complicated than that for my own personal takes. And hey, if I don't like it, I'll just do this. Do I hate this show? No, I don't. There are positives that I will talk about, although there will be some sprinklings of negatives in this. Let's start with the titular character of Dante.
Who are we shooting at?
Now, I enjoyed Dante as a character from the games, and in this show, he was tolerable for the most part. The show does go a bit deep into his backstory about how he lost his mother Eve and brother Virgil to demons years ago, and how he has to accept that he's half demon in order to access his devil trigger form. The character is jovial, fun, he likes to play around, and certainly has this bit of style and grace to him that is reminiscent of the games. The only glaring issue I see with Dante's character is...
Remind me again? Which of you is the Human Torch knockoff, and which is the talking leaf blower?
Look, I don't appreciate this not being reminiscent of Dante of the games. He didn't drop one-liner pop culture references all the time, but the issue I have with them being used here isn't because of that. It's more or less because I hate it when characters do this sort of thing. Referencing outside pop culture isn't cool or clever, and it certainly doesn't help that it's some of the worst choices you could make here.
What are they gonna do?
Form half a Captain Planet?
One may argue it's supposed to be reminiscent of the early 2000s and 90s. Yeah. And I've always stated this time and time again, just because there's a reason for something, that doesn't mean it's a good choice. Using pop culture references like this isn't smart or clever, even if they're dated to reference the time this show is supposed to take place in. If anything, there are references that do work here, and I'll explain why. The first is the reference to Street Fighter. Not only is it a reference to Capcom's other series, but it's something that isn't being spout off by the protagonist of the show to basically say, "Look at me guys, I'm in the 2000s and 90s, woo!" Or how about the reference to Raccoon City? Again, referencing another Capcom franchise, and one that's important since the original Devil May Cry was supposed to be the original Resident Evil 4. It feels more self-contained to the world of gaming, and more specifically the world of Capcom games. It feels more natural than bringing up Skeletor in this show, since it's more in line with the medium of video games and isn't as tied to specific time frames that would make them dated. The action scenes, even with the use of CGI, were nice, and I'm willing to give a bit of a pass to the CGI since I've gotten used to the mixture when watching the live action stuff. I do wish it was more hand-drawn animation, not reliant on CGI, but that's more preferential since it's not the bigger issue I have with the fight scenes. It was more of the erratic camera angles. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because I've gotten used to more stable camera movements in the fight scenes I watch, or because the games, it's a lot clearer to follow the action, but I wasn't a fan of the shaky camera stuff that was happening in the show. It's like, maybe it's a me thing, but I was getting dizzy watching it. Could be that I'm turning into a fossil, but still.
Look everybody! It's a fossil!
Alright, let's give an actual positive with no negatives. I really loved episode 6 where we got the backstories for Lady and the White Rabbit. Not only because it was mostly a silent episode where the music was actually appropriate for it, but also due to the change in art styles that made the episode stand out more. I've stated this before in previous videos that I love it when shows or games do this sort of thing. It really makes the material stand out in your mind, especially when it's more important information like this. I'd be lying if I didn't say that the story for both of these characters wasn't effective as well. Both the backstories do a good job of fleshing out the characters and explaining their motivations, for the most part. The voice acting for the show is done exceptionally well, and bless his soul, Kevin Conroy was able to have a role as the villain after his passing. Though my complaint is that he should have been named Barbas instead of Brains. Come on, you got a guy who keeps using the Lord as a reason to do things, and you ignore the one guy in DMC that is universally liked as a villain. For shame, Maddie! For shame!
I'm taking you off the air.
You think so? I wouldn't bet on it, you little shit.
Design-wise, I did like what they were going for with most of the cast. While I'm not a huge fan of the concept of Dark-Com, I did like how they looked like rejects of Captain Commando. It's a much more subtle reference to Capcom, but I appreciate that design, and it's one of the only subtle things there is. Speaking of, the demon design for more prominent ones were good, for the most part. It's weird to see Agni and Ruda with heads and having, I believe, Scottish accents?
I'm Scottish!
The other demons look good. Hell, the White Rabbit, a previously manga-only character, is pretty good here. And finally, Enzo.
Hey Enzo, how've you been?
I could do better to tell you the truth, like if you didn't have a barrel pressed to my temple right now.
Wish I could help you out there.
A scammer of a character who gives Dante his jobs. He was probably one of the better characters in the show, entertaining and was willing to take a knife for Dante. And hey, he's a character from the series. And depending on your perspective on continuity between Devil May Cry and Bayonetta, he actually managed to beat Dante in a game of strip poker. Though again, a different take on the character since in the manga he clearly looks different. Not a problem though, but there are some legit issues, and let's get into them.
Well, I met the sons of Sparta. Both of them. Though the same blood of their father flowed through their veins, the two battled each other fiercely like arch-enemies.
This will probably be a short section, since I already talked about Dante's characterization, but this one is dedicated to more or less Lady. I've already stated that the issue with Lady isn't the fact that she's the same character in the games, even though most of the backstory is similar to the core story of Devil May Cry 3, with her father becoming obsessed with demons and murdering her mother in the process. In the Netflix version, they just add a few other steps. That is not the problem with her characterization. No, it's the dialogue choice. You guys remember how people had issues with this?
I was going to say something witty and cutting and brutal before I finished you off. But fuck it.
Well, while the show doesn't have this issue with every character, Lady does.
You fucking moron, motherfucker. shithole fucking neck. Eat a fucking hell on your— This dumb fuck devil spawned an elite-sized ball. Fucked up demon bullshit.
Now, I'm not a prude. Hell, I've dropped the F-bomb a few times on this channel. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be doing that in this script. But it's weird since she's practically the only one who really swears and does it excessively. I'm not even against cursing, but dropping the F-bomb so many times comes off as forced and really doesn't make it too serious. You could at least change it up with the swearing. At least you have much more colorful dialect. I suppose we should talk about the direction of her character took, though. When Lady was introduced in the game, she was a badass loner on a quest for revenge, even going so far to go toe-to-toe with demons. A regular human with no special powers, but had the equipment to fight demons. Now, while that still has the same flavoring as this version, but now she's part of some Special Forces brute squad who takes orders from some suit voiced by Kevin Conroy. Now, I'd argue that Lady in the games has a more of a reason to cuss like a sailor, since unlike the Netflix adaptation, she didn't have Darkcom to fall back to, she didn't have fellow employees to work with, she didn't have any bonds, and she was looking to kill her father for what he did to her mother. But in the games, she doesn't really curse. You know how a lot of people got into this scene?
You don't look a day over 12,000. Fuck you! Fuck you! Fuck you!
Now, I won't say that's great writing, but at least had a purpose using the expletives. It was to add a bit of humor to the scene. Then again, as someone who hates the DMC reboot, it didn't land for me, but I understood what they were going for. Now, as opposed to when Lady says it all the time, it makes it hollow because of how often she drops it. Give me a crap, or asshole, or I don't know.
You shit-kicking, stinky horseman-horse-smelling motherfucker, you!
Something that doesn't make me feel like I'm watching the angry video game nerd.
You summon and kill. Summon and kill. I fail to see the logic here.
You know, for once, when I do these kinds of reviews, I would like to not bring up political issues in the shows.
I'm absolutely crazy about it!
You know what I think? Fuck you!
But, yes, my friends, politics are a thing in the Devil May Cry show, somehow.
So if this isn't hell, where the hell is it?
I suppose when Adi Shankar made that post about how the world was set in the world before and after 9/11, I suppose I should have taken to that. But I was, expecting just to refer to the music, which we'll get to later, but for now, politics. Watch me as I rip out my hair. Let's get into the complex world of politics. Can you tell I'm dead inside already?
Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
Effectively, what the show is trying to go for is a caricature on the War of Terror from the 90s, with the demons standing for the outsiders. The main villain of the season, the White Rabbit, seeks to tear down the barrier between the human and demon realms, wishing to break the wall. There's often the touch of oppression from him and how he wants to save the lower demons, or Makai folk as they're called. He acts as a counterpoint to Darkcom. Yes, seriously. The government agency hell-bent on eliminating all the demons in the world, including lesser demons that are trying to escape from the demon realm. I do want to point out, this isn't inherently a problem. Lord knows that this isn't the first time we've had shows on this channel that talk about how demons and sinners aren't always the bad people. And the show does a good job of showcasing that there are demons who aren't quote-unquote bad and are just looking to survive. It just feels out of place, especially for Devil May Cry, the series where you're juggling demons with your sword and bullets. And it gets muddied by the fact that the White Rabbit has experimented on these same poor people. It feels like a blatant contradiction for him wanting to help his people, since he was raised in the demon world, but is willing to sacrifice whoever and even put them through experiments that would kill them. Ideals be damned. The show, while calling out his actions, just kinda hand waves it away, and it feels messy to me. It's honestly kind of mirroring the so-called cruelty that he hated. The show was either trying to establish the White Rabbit as a hypocrite, or the commentary is tripping over itself in the process. Hi, Post-Editing Common here to address something that may come up. Now, some people may argue Lady calls the White Rabbit out on his bullshit. That's the point! But that doesn't hold up to me and allow me to explain. Yes, Lady accuses the White Rabbit of hypocrisy. But when he fires back with,
I feel every bit of pain that I cause for my people. I adopted the methods I was forced to by an enemy willing to do worse.
it's not just a comeback, it's a fact that the audience knows is true. Darkcom's treatment of demons is monstrous. They slaughter, exploit, the works, especially when they show at the end. The show does not shy away from this factoid, and that's where this all falls apart. If Lady had pushed him further by saying something akin to, how does your pain justify betraying the people you claim to represent? The hypocrisy angle could have landed with a lot more force. Instead, she lets it slide. Worse, when the White Rabbit reveals he's human, she stops challenging him altogether and even nods to his worldview, saying humans are the worst. The show doubles down on this, piling on the proof of demonic suffering at human hands, so his contradictions, exploiting demons while crying their pain, gets drowned out by the louder message. Human cruelty trumps all. His hypocrisy does get called out, sure, but it's dropped the second his humanity is revealed, leaving the critique half-baked. I love a contradictory villain, but this execution is murky. When the show proves he's right about human atrocities, his contradictory flaws feel like a sideshow to the bigger humans suck narrative. The messaging doesn't wrestle with his duality, it just shrugs and moves on. Okay, back to the actual video. I can see what they're trying to do, showing that the messy side of rebellion, but that even the good guys do bad things for the process of the greater good.
How can this be for the greater good?
It feels weak political messaging to me. That isn't to say the other political element, Darkcom, is good. It's practically the spine of the human side conflict and is not complex, nor does it leave any room for interpretation. It's about as subtle to a punch to the face. From the fact that the Vice President Baines won't shut up about how he's chosen from God, with the demons being a stand-in for the others in any conflict, Baines isn't a hard-line bureaucrat with a hidden agenda. He's a cartoonish zealot who's missing a very spiny mustache and asking you to watch him play golf.
Now watch this drive.
Hell, the show ends with the American government invading and taking over the demon world to the tune of Green Day's American Idiot. With how this is presented, this isn't complex, it's not subtle. The issue is that it practically spells out what the issues are and reveals that the show doesn't really trust the audience to connect the dots. Even the name Darkcom, can you have an even bigger neon sign that says Big Bad Government? At least with the reboot of DMC, Mundus had the subtlety to name his company Silver Sacks Industries, and this is a reminder of the quality writing in that game.
I will control the world through debt. I have absolute power.
The world is at last your bitch, as am I. Nothing left but to grab it by the hair, bend it over, and...
I want to make it clear that the issue isn't the message itself, that power abuses fear. It's the delivery that makes this from a show about fighting demons into a soapbox. Like, you're not piecing it together. This message is being shoved down your throat. Ah, son of a bitch! But Kamen, the Devil May Cry games have always had political elements to them. Oh, my brain. Yeah, I'm not going to deny that. But those political undertones were just that. Undertones. They actually had naturally occurring in the world and characters that didn't blare American Idiot in my face. Hell, the original games drew from stuff like Devilman and Gothic literature, with a focus on the power, corruption, and human flaws being the key there. Mundus ruled like a tyrannical overlord, or the Order of the Sword in Devil May Cry 4, which was a cult masquerading as a savior with theocratic vibes. So, yeah, there were critiques of authority and zealotry, to name a few of the elements in the original games, but they were stuck in the background and didn't really come up because you were too busy landing those sick combos and juggling demons in the air with bullets. Sometimes in the games you'd get, yeah, humans suck too, but they at least would make it entertaining. Hell, DMC 4, one of my favorite speeches in the entire series, specifically hones in on the human condition.
It takes a journey to hell for them to accept and praise their God. A fact that tickles irony's judgment.
And you want to know the response to that?
And your judgments interest me not. For I am here to reclaim what is rightfully mine.
The whole scene, while touching on some subjects about how humanity is weak and stubborn, shows that it puts that to the side because the reason why Agnes is bringing this up is because he views himself as above humanity.
Though I encourage for an opportunity to battle a being of such grand delusion as you is a sweet fortune.
And Dante never really gives him an answer as to what humans have that demons lack, because it allows the audience to come to their own conclusions. Or outright ignore it because it's a funny scene. Meanwhile, in the Netflix adaptation, it's more like the show grabs you by the collar and yells in your face about its messaging. I am well aware that Shankar is going for the in-your-face vibe with this show. But that to me ignores the core element of the game's narrative, where it had this cool detachment from its themes that you could get into if you wanted to. But not so much here unless you're skipping around. And it's fine if he wants to take that route, but that doesn't mean you're making anything complex or nuanced about it. All you're doing is shouting at your audience. Now, I read an article talking about how the politics are complex in this show when... no, they're not. Complex politics don't have to scream in your face. They allow the audience to think. They allow the audience to come to their own conclusions by following the clues you give them. And they certainly don't have to be so on the nose they have to wonder, why the fuck is Green Day playing right now? This is going to be of a smaller segment. This is going to tackle things that I had issue with that don't fall under the other chapters. And let's start with the biggest one, the music. A very contentious subject that apparently a lot of people enjoy the music choices for this series, which, okay, I can't account for taste for that, but whatever, I'm still going to go over it. One of the goals for this series was apparently to make it a tribute to when the games were released to the early 2000s, often going with the new metal theme. You got stuff like Rollin', Last Resort, and Afterlife, which yes, do evoke a nostalgic vibe to the era in question when the games did come out. But to me, they don't really represent the actual core of Devil May Cry, or what they were going for. The original games have this gothic, industrial, and orchestral tones that accurately define the franchise. Tracks like Devils Never Cry, Bury the Light, and Devil Trigger tie into the C's core identity, which enhanced the cool aesthetics that the games were going for, while also having this theatrical spin too. And while those three songs are in the Netflix adaptation, they're grossly misplaced. Devil Trigger is a theme from Nero from Devil May Cry, and even though you have Johnny Young Bosch portraying Dante now, that theme doesn't really work, especially when it's just used for a brief moment when Dante activates his Devil Trigger. Meanwhile, the other two are just dumped as end credit themes, save for Bury the Light when the cloned version of Virgil appears. And it feels like a slap to the face with the music that is so badass it ignores the musical legacy of the games. The tracks chosen for this do have nostalgic throwback to that time period, I'm not going to argue that, but it often clashes with the narrative emotional beats and action. It lacks the synergy that the games had with its action scenes. And it doesn't help that I'm not a huge fan of using licensed tracks, especially when it's used in a heavy reliance over the personally tailored game-inspired scores. It makes it feel more like a gimmick and it actively hurts the effortlessly cool factor that Dante and Devil May Cry has. Tracks like Public Enemy, Taste of Blood, or Ultraviolet didn't just set the mood for the games, they added swagger and style for every move that Dante made. It was cohesive and purposeful to tie into the game's DNA of being cool and a little unhinged. This was its spirit. The tracks were made timeless. And here's the thing, the animation could have been enhanced by tracks like that. But now it sounds like instead of entering the Thème Negru, I'm entering Hot Topic. If you like the choice for music, fine. But don't tell me that it would fit the vibe of the games, because that explicitly ignores the music that was made for the games. Hey, post-edit comment again. So, since I was looking for speed with this video, I didn't notice on my first go-through that there were some other tracks from the Devil May Cry games, like V's theme, Crimson Cloud. It plays when Cavalier is attacking, which is a choice. Again, that's V's theme, much like how Devil Trigger is Nero's theme. I get that Dante is voiced by Johnny Young Bosch, but come on. It's clear that the OG music tracks are playing second fiddle to licensed tracks, even to the point where there's an explicit scene in the second episode claiming that when the licensed music comes on, Dante's got good taste. It just feels cheap to me that the game music gets a backseat to the licensed stuff. So there's a Darkcom soldier whose name doesn't really matter, who's being used as a spy for the White Rabbit to get into Darkcom and find the pendant when it's taken from Dante. There's nothing wrong with that, but what is wrong is that at the end of this series, he's picking up the White Rabbit's device that can open demon portals and get onto a helicopter that the Vice President Baines is on. When he's dragged in, the device is taken, he's shot out of the helicopter, and the Vice President begins the attack on the demon world playing Green Day for some goddamn reason. So, my issue is, the guy says he was supposed to destroy it. Whether or not that's true, couldn't you have just thrown that into the water while you're hanging onto the rope outside the helicopter? Like, if that was actually his goal, what was stopping him from dropping it and have it smash against the pavement or end up in the bottom of the Hudson River? Hell, not like the government actually picked that damn thing up. They left it on the ground, on the rooftop. Probably would have been destroyed in the fight against the White Rabbit's more demonic form. Or if that's not his goal, then what the fuck was the plan here? Here's one more. So, early in the show, we get a cameo of Virgil, but it turns out to be this shape-shifting demon. Plasma. I want to make this clear. The demon shape-shifted into Virgil. Now, why is this important? Well, at the end of the third episode, this same demon appears and bluntly talks about how his powers work. He can only replicate into someone who is alive.
My power works off of quantum mirroring. I can only take on a new body if I'm copying a form made of living tissue. Which means I need to keep you alive.
So, logically speaking, he would have to have run into Virgil. So, not that it matters, I suppose, but it's like, did this guy know that Virgil was in the demon world and met him? How would he even know this guy was related to Dante? Because when we see him first, he looks like Nello Angelo. How would he even know to take this form against Dante? Either way, it ruins any sort of dramatic tension in the plot, and it's about as subtle as a sledgehammer to the side of the head. Like, it just raises too many questions. I want to preface by saying that if you like this series, more power to you. I'm not going to shy away from my opinions or preferences because of that though, but I want you guys to realize that just because I have these critiques, if you found enjoyment of that, do not let me take that from you. I personally believe that this version of Devil May Cry is something that could be good, but is weighed down by a lot of stuff. Most notably, the vision that Adi Shankar has for it. But if that's his vision, that's fine. The guy has connections, the guy has some level of talent, and he's more than welcome to make it. But just because there are people who like his vision, that doesn't mean everyone has to find it perfect. Nor does it mean I had to accept this as part of the Devil May Cry series. Adi, who I may have a twinkling might actually see this, I want you to know that I may disagree with your take on this version of Dante and Devil May Cry, but I do respect you to some degree to actually do this. As a fellow creator on a much smaller scale, I can appreciate what you're trying to do to an extent, but be it as it may, I have issues with this. And I am tired of being told that just because I have issues with this series, that I am not a real fan. That anyone who has issues with how it tells its stories or delivers its politics is a bad person, and I'm frankly tired of it. I'm not going to pretend this was peak to me when it clearly wasn't. That being said, this is just my opinion on it. If you enjoyed it, that is fine. Do not let me take that joy away from you. But by that same token, that doesn't mean you should just glaze over opinions on the matter. After all, you clicked on this video, you apparently wanted to know what I was talking about with this series. But here's the question. Do I think it's better than the 2007 anime that I just reviewed and you should totally watch right now? Well, that depends on what you mean by better. Animation and style-wise, yeah, I can see this version being better. Storytelling? Possibly, but it's ruined by the lack of subtlety that the writing should have. And I know that's by design, but if you ask me, that's not a good design choice. But this is the internet, so I ask you guys, what do you think? Let me know in the comments if you like this show, if you hated it, or if you're just indifferent to it, and tell me why. This was a quick video because holy hell, I basically got this script done on the same day that the series dropped. We'll see how things go. And maybe I'll revisit it once I had a chance to cool down and, you know, sit at the series and let it simmer a little bit. If there's a second season, there's no guarantee I'll watch it. DMC typically has issues even worse in the second part of its story. So, I'm MangaKamen, and go play the actual Devil May Cry games. Trust me, it's worth your time. Except for 2. No one likes 2.